Konnichiwa. Ohayou gozaimasu. Welcome everybody. So, just about to get started here. Today is going to be a lesson on JLPT. The JLPT stands for the Japanese Language Proficiency Test, and I think it's probably one of the best things you can do if you're looking to improve your Japanese. If you want to know what the best thing to improve your Japanese is, it's going to Japan. It's the best thing to do. I myself went on an exchange for 10 months, and before I went, I pretty much couldn't speak any Japanese. I knew a few bits of grammar here and there, knew a few words. Basically knew no Kanji, I would say, and I knew hiragana pretty well, and katakana I think I could probably scrape by, but I was pretty terrible, I gotta admit. When I came back, I was a lot better, because there's no real substitute. No real substitute for going in country, listening, speaking to the language all day, every day. So yeah. But that's not always available to everyone, although if you're really serious about your Japanese, even if you can only get over to Japan for a few weeks on a tourist visa, I would definitely do it. But the earlier, as with all languages, the earlier you can do it, the better. I went when I was 15, and even that's a bit too late. But when I talk to people in uni, for example, they kind of put off going on exchange, and then they thought they could do it during university. But it gets pretty hard. The older you get, the less time you have, and your brain also is not so receptive to languages as you get older. So definitely better to go earlier rather than later. But anyway, that's enough about that. Let's talk about JLPT. So what is it? Well, like I said, it stands for the Japanese Language Proficiency Test, and we're going to look at the website. This is pretty good. So I've got a link to a Google Doc in the YouTube description, so you can just click on that, and then within that I've got a link to the JLPT official English language website. I would definitely have a read of this. I mean, as with all exams and with all tests, you have to be aware of what they're testing you on. What's the philosophy of the exam? How do they mark you? Because it's all well and good to think, well, if I just study hard, I'll do well, right? If I just study the material, if I just study Japanese, I'll do well. But it's not really how exams work, and this actually took me a long time to kind of come to grips with this. I didn't really want to believe it, I guess. But you have to study for the exam itself. You have to know how the exam operates, you have to know how you get maximum points in all the disciplines, and then you have to study so that when you, for example, give an answer, you're answering within that framework. And I know this might not sound great to a few people. I know that I was really against this idea for a long time, but then I just kind of realized, why can I speak Japanese, for example, or, this applies to anything. Why can I do certain things very well, but when it comes to examination time, I don't get the marks that I want? And then I look at people who I would say are kind of inferior to me in terms of ability for certain things, but they would absolutely kill it in the exams. And then I talk to these people more and more, and I found sometimes it's just kind of luck, but a lot of times it's because they were better prepared for the exam they were taking. And like I said, I was very kind of obstinate about this for a long time, but once I realized what was going on, this really did improve my marks in not just Japanese, but virtually everything I ever do now. Because I think about what's the kind of bedrock of the exam? What do they want you to demonstrate? What knowledge are you trying to show? And then, studying in a way that you can best do that. Alright, so let's look a bit at this website. Okay, so pretty standard stuff. We can see that the big news here is the registration. Okay, big news here is the registration. Actually, let me see if I can just pop in something here. That'll do. Okay. So a pretty standard website. Registration is always very important. You have to actually register quite a bit in advance for this exam. So we see that the exams this year are in July 1st and December 2nd. Now, for example, it says it right here. It's only held once. You know, these are the test dates for Japan, but all around the world, sometimes it's only in July and sometimes it's only in December. So, for example, I know in Australia, where I live in Perth, they only have exams in December. But I know, I'm pretty sure, I should probably look, but I believe like Canberra and some other places have it twice a year. Yeah, so yeah, Brisbane has it twice. Okay, Canberra only has it in July. But yeah, I just keep in mind that it's not. But you have to register quite far in advance. So I believe last year it was about August, I think I had to register for the December exam. So quite a fair bit in advance. But this is our basically you know, that's when it's going to happen, and it's good to be prepared. So what does the JLPT really focus on? What is it really looking at? Well, there are some main characteristics that this exam focuses on that you want to be aware of. So firstly, the first section, it's going to talk about language knowledge, alright? And this is vocabulary and grammar. So a lot of kanji is going to come up in this section. I always kind of thought of it as the kanji and grammar section. And this is always actually my favorite section because I always liked a lot of kanji. But it's going to test vocabulary, which means it's going to write words out, not necessarily in kanji. And basically there'll be a sentence with a blank, and you have to work out what is the most appropriate word. And that grammar lessons will come into that at the same time. Then there'll be a reading section, so this is comprehension. You have various types of things. You can have, you know, flyers, advertisements, any kind of thing with Japanese text on it, basically. And you'll have to read it, and then there'll be questions at the end. And this can take the form of various things. You know, what is the message? What is the author trying to tell you? What word should go here? That kind of stuff. So even in the reading comprehension, they include parts from language knowledge as well. Finally, there's a listening section. Okay, so they play some audio, and then you have questions that you have to answer about the audio. Now, this listening section is actually quite different, perhaps. I know at least in Australia, this is quite different to how Japanese exams are done. So you get the question first, and then they play the clip, and then they say the question again. Alright, but the main difference there is you only get to hear it once. A lot of Japanese exams, I know at least high school exams here in Australia, you get to hear the dialogue twice with a little bit of a break in between. So that makes it a lot different, okay? If you only get to hear it once, if you miss something, that's basically it. You don't get another chance. So this poses particularly a problem with numbers, okay? If you don't hear that number properly, you're not going to get another shot. Now, this exam has actually evolved quite a lot over the years I've been doing it. And for example, I went for N1 last year. I'll talk about the N levels in a second. And in the listening section there, they even don't give you the question sometimes. So they'll just play the dialogue, and then the question comes at the end. So they have changed up the format quite a bit, and I guess this is to head off criticism that, I mean, you can do well in the JLPT and still not be able to speak and understand Japanese. So they're trying to change it so that it's a bit more dynamic. And yeah, trust me, it was quite hard last year. I didn't do very well in listening, I don't think. There was definitely some questions in there where I just missed them completely. So, but anyway, I could be going for it again this year. I'm going to say I'm going to definitely pass because I got quite close last year. But listening can be quite difficult for some people. Now you notice here that there's no speaking, okay? So unlike a lot of other proficiency tests, even in other languages, there's no test of your speaking ability. Okay, but trust me, the other sections are very hard. Listening in particular, I find the grammar section, very tricky, and the vocabulary. Okay, a lot of vocabulary can come up here, including some very tricky kanji. Okay, so we've got we have to choose our level. Okay, so 5 levels. Now, if you people have come across the JLPT before, you might think it's only 4 levels. That was the old style of the exam. It just used to be called ikkyu, nikkyu, sankyu, yonkyu, but that has been changed now to this N level, and also that's also resulted in a bit of shifting in difficulty. Okay, so this new N5 level is probably quite a bit easier than the old level 4 used to be, and then I think and as a consequence, N4 has become a little bit harder. So they've just kind of split N4 into 2, I feel. But I haven't done a lot of research on that, so don't take my word for it. So if you're in, N5 is the lowest and N1 is the highest. Now, a lot of people might ask me, what's the point of getting N1 or getting any of these? Well, first of all, I'll say that once I got these various qualifications, I definitely, it's not just that you feel better at Japanese, you know that you're better. You know how to use grammar in the correct way, you know that kanji is correct, because if you've studied correctly for these exams, you'll know what the right answer is. I mean, you have to have confidence in it. You have to have all these little tricks and mnemonics and memory tricks to just remember all this information, and that it's got to go in this order and that it makes sense this way. So I noticed particularly when I did the exam, it was Nikkyu. When I got that level 2, I've never felt like more confident about my Japanese than after I got that. It's just, it really is a very satisfying feeling once you can get there. But why would you need N1? Well, for example, when I did my working holiday to Japan and I was applying to all these different places to work, if it was any type of big corporation or big company that was kind of like an office job or whatever, you needed N1. Like, they wouldn't even bother. Okay, so I couldn't apply for any of those jobs because I didn't have it. I had N2. I mean, I ended up working in a nice hotel. It was fun, but I couldn't get those kind of coveted, really big salary jobs. Let's just put it that way. Not that there are that many in Japan for non-Japanese, but I couldn't even apply for them because I didn't meet the requirements. So yeah, if you ever want to be living and working in Japan long term, you're going to need to get N1. So it's quite a high level qualification, and N1 I notice in particular, it tests a lot of business Japanese, so it really does, I think, prepare you quite well. And if you can pass N1, I think you're quite good at Japanese, and despite the fact that there's no testing of your speaking, your listening and comprehension will be very good. So perhaps you're not so fluent when you talk to people. Not necessarily is what I'm saying. You may be, but because the exam doesn't test it, you can't say, for example, that your speaking is at N1 level. But for sure, your comprehension must be very good, and especially your comprehension of reading and listening. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So the self-evaluation lists, I would recommend you have a look at those. Okay. Alright, so we've got a breakdown of N1 to N5. So if we start at the bottom here, we see basic Japanese. Alright, I was trying to find where they talk about how many hours you need to do, because they used to publish that, well, to pass this level you need so many 100 hours of Japanese study. But I'll give you some indications of where I think various students are. So basic Japanese, okay. So I would say that probably you're going for N5 if you've got some pretty solid full-time study of Japanese for about, and we're talking out of Japan, okay, so studying it kind of self-study or through a school environment, not in Japan. I would think, depending on your kind of background and how much you study, you could pretty much go from 0 to N5 level. I would say if you were really good, you could probably do it in 6 months. but that would be a challenge for a lot of people, I think. At a minimum, I would think most people would need a year, and probably 2 years, 3 years. If you think about if you started studying Japanese, for example, at the beginning of high school, perhaps when you get to year 10 or year 9, you could pass N5. The main barrier, I would think, for people doing well in this is kanji. All right, yeah, people probably don't have enough kanji, and vocabulary might be a bit of a challenge, and you might generally do well with the grammar, but you're gonna probably have some issues on the very hairy grammar questions that they may ask, so you're not gonna do too well on that. But for sure, if you follow my lessons and do a lot of self-study, N5 is achievable in that kind of time frame. N4, we see, read and understand passages on familiar daily topics, okay? And this is actually a big point, this daily topics thing, because it means you can really focus where you what vocabulary you're going to learn and what grammar you're going to learn. So it's really about describing who did what, who went where, the past form, the future tense kind of thing, talking about meeting people, times, dates, talking about food, talking about tourist locations, selecting objects. Someone wants something, and you can say, well, that's this object. So this kind of what's I guess called nichijou kaiwa, right? Everyday conversation. It's getting sometimes these can be a bit tricky, but very topical questions include things like, I want to go to the museum. What's the best way to get there? And then someone will say, well, you can go by bicycle, you can go by train, you can go by bus, and then they'll give all the various, benefits of one, why you shouldn't take this, okay? But what we're going to notice, the big difference here with N4 is, unlike N5, they're not going to just give you the answer anymore. It won't be something like, hello, I want this book. Which book do you want? The red book. It's not going to be quite like that anymore. It's going to be like this museum one. It'll be like, well, you can go by train, but it's a long walk to the station from the museum and back again. You can take the bus, but it takes a long time. And then they'll say, do you have a bicycle? Yeah, I've got a bicycle. Okay, do that. Okay, and then it won't be super clear which one they've actually chosen. It'll just be one little word slipped in there, or basically they've said all the other options are bad, and then you've got this option, so the person's like, okay. So that's the other thing. They're going to start using a bit of misdirection, alright? They're going to try and make you really question, wait a minute, what was the actual answer? You heard a whole bunch of keywords, but N5 is about keywords. N4 is about, okay, do you actually understand what grammar is, how grammar is being used to convey meaning to you? Okay. And we see here spoken slowly. Alright, this is a major feature. Alright. So now we see N3. This is getting, I didn't actually mention. So N4, I would say you're probably having to have spent quite a few years learning Japanese to pass this. And just as a marker, I recommended some of my students take it last year. And they had about 3 to 4, maybe 5 years of study at school. Okay, so we're talking about maybe 2 to 4 hours a week in school, plus of course some self-study, and they weren't able to pass N4. They probably didn't do enough self-study. Okay, this is a big part of this, and maybe they underestimated the exam a little bit. It can be quite tricky, but I'm confident that at least one of those students should be able to pass N4 this year. So I would say, once you pass year 12 Japanese, so you're looking at have done 4 or 5 years of Japanese study in a school environment, you should be at N4 level. Perhaps you need to do a bit more work on your kanji, because like I said, the Japanese exams in Australian school at least, it focuses quite heavily on speaking and writing, and neither of these skills are really tested in JLPT, so that means that there's a lot more emphasis on, the level for grammar and kanji and comprehension is a lot higher, so there's that kind of trade-off that you have to get used to. But having said that, I was able to pass N3 when I was in Japan, and as I mentioned, I was not very good at Japanese. I'm not sure I could have even passed N5 when I first got to Japan, and then I was there for 10 months, and then I took the JLPT basically a month before I left, so I'd been in Japan for about 9 months by the time I took JLPT, and I was able to get, I think, like, I passed N3, it wasn't N3, sorry, I passed Sankyu very easily, very handily, let's just say. So you could definitely get to this N4 level, which I think is equivalent to what N3 is. I'd say, I gotta get this terminology right. N4 is very similar to Sankyu, I would say. Very similar. Maybe Sankyu is slightly harder, but that'd be much of a muchness, I would say. So I was able to pass that with 9 months of intensive study. So we would say, I would say a year or two of very intensive study, you could pass N4, starting from an absolute beginner. Okay, N3. Okay, so now we're getting it quite, and the other thing you'll notice is that there is a big jump between the various levels here. Big jump, alright? So this is another big change I've noticed with the JLPT. So now what we see, the ability to understand Japanese used in everyday situations to a certain degree. Okay, so everyday situations, this is quite a big, pardon me, quite a bit larger than familiar daily topics. Okay, everyday situations, this is getting quite tricky. So written materials. Okay, so now we start seeing that the form of the document is quite important. So you have to kind of realize, is this an advertisement? Is this a letter? Is this a journal article? Something like this. Is this a memo written to someone? Summary information. Okay, so now we're not going to see these kind of nice long sentences which contain all the information you need, but rather this will be you know, attention grabbing things, or very truncated. And we're going to see a lot of Japanese grammar is useful for this, in that we can shorten sentences quite drastically because there's a lot of implications made. Yeah, so some slightly difficult writings. Okay, so now we see coherent conversations in everyday situations spoken at near natural speed. Okay, and this is definitely, I would say, the biggest problem for a lot of people doing this exam, the speed. Okay, I mean, this is what used to blow my mind when I was in Japan. You know, I thought I was alright with Japanese before I went there, and when I got there I thought, man, I cannot understand a single word when people are speaking. I can't pick out anything at all. So, you know, you're going to have to get used to the speed, and this is why you need to practice these exams quite a lot. And yeah, this is an important point actually, grasp the relationships among the people involved. So this is kind of a unique, I just wonder, is that too small on the stream? I might just zoom this a bit. That might be a bit better. Sorry if that was a bit small. Anyway, you can go to the website and look. So, where is it? Yep, so the grasp the relationships among the people who are involved. This is a really important point. So in Japanese, you know, we have politeness levels, varying politeness levels that you can tell kind of the relationship between two people. You can say, well, this is probably, this person's like a customer and this is the shopkeeper, or this is a young child and a parent, something like that, alright? So, and this becomes quite important when you're trying to work out what's happening. Very, very important. Okay, N2. Alright, so now we're really getting into the serious, this is the real business end, I think, of the JLPT. This is where really, like I said, when I passed, when I did it, it was called Nikyu. But when you pass exam at this level, I think this is when you really start to kind of realize what your Japanese ability is. This is quite difficult, I'm going to say. I'm actually surprised I passed it, to be honest. I studied pretty hard for this one, and I don't think I passed it that handsomely, but I did get over the line. You know, obviously I did pass, so who cares what point I got in the end. But I got to say, I wasn't super confident about doing well on this. Alright, so what are we talking, what's the philosophy here now? So it's the ability to understand Japanese used in everyday situations, okay? So very broad, like Sankyu, N3, but we see in a variety of circumstances. Alright, so we're going to be changing the circumstances quite drastically. So on a variety of topics, right? So now we see commentaries, okay? Now, when you think about what a commentary is, we're not really just giving plain facts anymore, which is really what N5 and N4 and N3 are all about. They're just kind of stating things and you have to understand what's being said. But now when we get commentaries, critiques, okay, comprehension of contents, now you can kind of understand we're getting opinion coming into the mix, alright? So there's going to be, we have to think about people's feelings, people's reactions to certain materials, which makes it quite a bit trickier. Alright, following narratives, okay, so reading between the lines, these kind of things, intent. Okay, so this is obviously you're having to understand the nuance in Japanese, which I find quite tricky sometimes, to really do well in these things. And also I should point out that this is obviously a timed exam and you don't have a lot of time to really go back and reread and reread and reread. You've got to kind of pick it up on the first read through. There's just too many questions otherwise. Okay, so again, nearly natural speed. I mean, pretty much once you get to N2, most of the recordings are at natural speed. But also, I noticed they kind of use a lot of different voice actors. So they have old people, young people, and so you're going to have to get used to people not really pronouncing their words properly, because this really is trying to emulate real life conversations, and sometimes people don't speak clearly, you know. I used to get this all the time when I was in the hotel, because people would call me up on the phone wanting to know things, and you know, Japan is 99% ethnic Japanese people. They're not going to expect non-Japanese people to be around. It's quite a homogenous society. So when they call up a Japanese hotel, especially the type of hotel I worked at, which was not really a catering for international guests, they're not expecting a non-Japanese person to answer that phone. And then my accent passes over the phone particularly, so they would just, you know, just start speaking really quick without really any context, and I had to kind of scramble a lot of the times to work out what was going on. And then, you know, I would notice when then that if that person I talked to on the phone would then come into the hotel, which happened quite a lot, right? Because they would call to get directions, for example. They would then speak to me a little bit differently when they saw who I was, alright? So, you know, it can be quite difficult to pick this stuff up when it's quick. But yeah, that's what everyday life is like. You never know who you're going to talk to, how they speak their words, if they've got a lisp, you know, if they've got any kind of speech impediment, or they're just getting a bit old, so they slur their words a bit maybe. It could be anything. Okay, so that's N2. Alright, so now we have the top level. Alright, this is my goal for this year. Pretty hard, I've got to say. Pretty hard, and I can understand why this is kind of the gold standard when you're in Japan. I mean, I think if you can pass N1, you're pretty proficient at Japanese. Let's put it that way. I mean, not only do you know so many words and so many kanji and so many just subtle points about Japanese, but you also would know a lot about the culture, okay? You're going to know about all the festivals, the kind of etiquette, all these kind of things, and I noticed that this gets tested a lot in N1, because, you know, if you want to, it's all well and good just being a robot and learning the language, but if you want to really communicate with people in a language, you're going to need to know all these kind of cultural assumptions, cultural history, all these things. You'll have to know them if you want to speak fluent Japanese, at least understand fluent Japanese. Okay, so we see logical complexity and abstract writings. Okay, so yeah, this is I find this very tricky. Okay, this logical complexity is hard, but these abstract writings can be quite tricky. Editorials and critiques, okay, and structures. Alright, this is a hugely important part. They're going to build on things, and this means that I think you can get away in the lower levels with skimming parts and just focusing, just trying to find, like when it asks a question about a certain part of the article, you just reread that part of the article lots of times. But I've noticed with the N1, it's going to build the argument over several paragraphs, so you can't just skim it. You really have to read it line by line. And of course that takes a lot of time, and you don't have a lot of time. Profound contents, okay? This is the other thing. There's going to be a lot of usage of idioms, just all types of things where they're wanting you to, it's reading between the lines and working out what is the author trying to get at here. Working out the intent of the writers comprehensively. I think that's a very good description. Intent is a big part of these higher levels. So natural speed, news reports, lectures, okay, lots of business conversations, talking about sales and things like this, So I found those quite tricky because I don't have a lot of exposure to business Japanese in that setting. Okay, so that's it. Okay, quite tricky. Alright, so they've got some, they talk about the books a little bit here. Now these are the official books. Now I actually do have, I bought this one actually, not the workbook, sorry, but I bought, yeah, here we go. So I bought something like this. I don't think it was the 2009 one, but I bought this previous exams and answers. Now, I'm not saying it was not a good purchase, but really this is not going to help you learn. This is to see, hey, are you actually ready? This is what you should be doing a few weeks out from the exam to see, hey, has all the study that I've done, is it paying off? Or should I just not go to the exam? I would never recommend that. Just go to the exam and fail. That's better than not knowing. But I found this kind of useful, but mainly it just kind of scared me when I'm saying it scared me when I tried to use it as a study material, because you just kind of look at this, you're trying to go through this stuff and you don't know it, and it's like, well, but you're not learning it just by someone telling you the answer. So I would recommend you, I probably shouldn't say recommend because I haven't used these books, but you really want to look more at the workbooks, okay? You want the question answers, I think, to be honest, it's not that useful. But going through a workbook is good. Now I haven't used this one, as I said, but it is the official book produced by the Japan Foundation and Japan Educational Exchanges and Services. So you can probably have some pretty high confidence that the people who are writing these books are involved in the writing of the exam, so it'll probably be quite good. Now, having said that, you can see it's quite cheap, 700 yen. This is, very roughly, this is about $7 or so, plus some tax, plus some shipping. So you're probably looking, you can get it all the way at least to Australia for less than $20. And that's not much of an investment for the amount of material that you'll get in a book like this. You'll see it comes with a CD, so that's good as well. But I actually bought a separate book because I borrowed one off my friend, a JLPT prep book, and I really liked it. So I don't actually have it to hand. Let me just go get it. So I would recommend this book. Okay. Not really sure how well that's going to look on the camera. It's a bit of a delay until I see it. But it's called Nihongo So Matome. And up the top here it says Nihongo Noryoku Shiken Taisaku. And basically the Nihongo Noryoku Shiken is how you say JLPT. But Taisaku kind of means that these are materials made specifically, like this book is specifically made for JLPT test takers. Okay, so quite a good book, and this is the Kanji one. So it's for N1, of course, and it's for Kanji. And they also released a Bunpo one, so a one for grammar, and a Goi one, a one for vocabulary. So this is actually my friend's book. I will return it. I swear I will return it once I've passed the exam. So I'll keep it until then. But I was really impressed with this book, so I ended up buying the grammar one. Okay, I didn't bother buying the vocabulary one because I figured between this and the grammar book, I'll learn plenty of vocabulary, and I've got flashcards anyway, which I'll talk about in a second, which I use. But I just really like the layout of this book. It's got lots of material, lots of tests, and you can do the whole book. So let me do my math here. well, it says right here, sorry, you can do it in, you can finish this whole book in 8 weeks, and you basically do 2 pages a day for 8 weeks. Alright, so, I mean, looking at what, it's about 2 months, so you could blitz through this starting in like October sometime, but I wouldn't recommend that. There's a lot of material here, and of course I'm trying to do the Bloompo one as well, which is also, you do it in 8 weeks, so I've actually gone through both of these books now once. I didn't manage to, I finished this one, and then I did about halfway of my grammar book before the exam hit. Didn't really time it very well, so I finished the grammar book, and now I'm going back through the kanji book, and then when I'm done this, I'll go back through the grammar book again. So yeah, but I would really, I mean, I was never been a big fan of textbooks, but I would highly recommend something like this. I just think the way it's set out is quite good. Although I will point out there are kind of quite a few mistakes in here, but you know, once you get to N1 level, you can actually recognize these mistakes sometimes. But yeah, again, I think this definitely, I got this to I mean, this is 1,200 yen, so it's about $12, but with shipping, it's yeah, plus tax, so it's a bit more than $12 plus tax. But I got this to Australia for less than 20 Australian, so it's very cheap, and I've just got so much out of it. You know, can't say no to something like that. So, I mean, I would just really look around. If you've got something like a Japanese cultural center or something in your town, you can go there, because often they'll have a big library. I know the universities also have sometimes big Asian collections where you can find past JLPT exam papers. Like my university was like this, and you know, you didn't have to be a student. Okay, you could just walk into that library. You can't borrow anything unless you organize something, but they've got, you know, it's a library. You can just sit inside it and you know, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but you can just take photos, then take it home and study it if you want. But yeah, I used to spend a lot of time in the library at my university, just using the books. And yeah, you don't need to be a member to borrow stuff. You can just, well, you do have to be a member to borrow stuff, but you don't have to be a member to look at stuff inside the library. So I would look at that. And even if you've got like a state library or a kind of a big library in your area, they might even have these materials. But yeah, you don't have to buy anything actually to do well on this exam, but I think it really does help. Okay. So I'm kind of in two minds about whether I should do this, because I don't want to get any of these wrong on stream. And I'm particularly saying I really don't want to try the N1 on stream. But I think we might go a bit simple, and we'll go for N4, because this is actually I find most of my students how to do N4. So let's have a go. Alright, so I think these sample questions are actually really good. They do give you a very good approximation of what level that you're at. I've been having a lot of issues with my internet, but I guess no, that's fine. Okay. So this is the first section, okay, and we can see it says language knowledge, characters, which includes kanji, and vocabulary, okay, goi. Alright, with this first section we've got kanji yomi, okay? So we're just looking at how can we read kanji. Now, that's one thing I actually didn't mention, but JLPT is entirely multi-choice. Entirely multiple choice. And now a lot of you might say, wow, that is amazing. That's great. Trust me, they can make it, I don't care what your views are on multi-choice, but trust me, they can make it really hard. They can make it really hard. The other thing I guess I should mention with JLPT is that there's kind of a philosophy, and it'll often be written up here. But we see, you know, the underline. So I'll say in Japanese, no kotoba wa hiragana de dou kakimasu ka? 1, 2, 3, 4 から一番いいものを一つ選んでください. Now, I want to point out that this question even, they write it so that N4 takers can understand it. Alright, this is about an N4 level sentence. But notice that there's no kanji in here. Okay, so they'll even do that for you. They'll write the questions out in kanji. But again, it's like, well, if you don't understand, what was I going to say then? If you're having to read this exam guidance during the exam, you have not approached the exam properly. Okay, you should know what they're going to write above each section, because this basically doesn't change year to year. But anyway, It says for the underlined bit, no kotoba wa, so for the word that's underlined, hiragana de do kakimasu ka? So how do you write it in hiragana? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4 kara, so from 1, 2, 3, 4. 一番いいもの, okay, so the most appropriate, basically we can say this, the number one best thing, or hitotsu irande kudasai. Please choose the best one. Okay, and this really sums up JLPT in a nutshell. Okay, you're going to have certain questions where you think, oh, it could be this one, it could be this one. But trust me, there is no subjectivity in this exam. There's always a way, either through grammar, through appropriate vocabulary, or just through how kanji works, that you can say for sure, no, this is the right answer. Well, at least someone can. Maybe you can't in the exam, but at least someone can point out to you, hey, logically, this is what it has to be. Okay, and in kanji this is a bit easier because it's like, well, there's a right and wrong answer with kanji. Okay, so let's have a go here. So we'll have our sentence, and we've got our underline bit, and we have to choose from 1, 2, 3, 4 which one it is. So, ani wa basu de kaisha ni something imasu. We've got mukatte, kayotte, watatte, modotte. Now, even if you think about these answers closely, you will see that these just aren't randomly picked. First of all, they're obviously putting the te in here so that you can, so that it works. So you can't just go, well, this one can't be it, for example, because it has no te. But it does. They all have te, so we can't do that. So obviously we have to know how to read this. But even if we look at these words, mukatte, I mean, this even has something to do with direction. Okay, it means to face towards or to go towards. Kayotte, this is actually our answer. Watatte, this means to cross, right? So you can say hashi o watatte, to cross a bridge. Modotte, this is to return. Okay, so actually all these words kind of even work in here. So again, it's not about do you know the vocabulary, it's do you know the kanji. Okay, and it's kayotte. Oh, that was really loud. Oh jeez. Might have to turn that down a bit. That scared me. Alright. Okay, so we can see sekai desu. That's correct. Alright, and we've got our Japanese circle, which means you did well. It does mean 0, as some people sometimes worry about. So, yoku dekimashita, you did well. Sugi no mondai mo yatte mimashou. So, let's do the next one. Okay, so we've got our same instructions. Fune de nimotsu wo okurimasu. Okay, so now we see it's not kanji yomi anymore, it's the opposite. Okay, so we're trying to read it in hiragana and say, well, which kanji is this? Okay, so you're going to get both sides. So this is kind of a way that the JLPT can test you whether you can write the kanji. It's not really testing whether you can write it, but it's kind of saying, well, can you recognize it when we've got very similar kanji? And trust me, N4 they're going to test this, but once they get to the higher levels, there's some really messed up ones they can use to trick you. Okay. So now the other thing I want to point out is that they're going to put very convincing fake answers in here. So this kanji can't actually, this is actually like a false answer, I want to say, because this kanji can't be read when it's got this rimas on the end. It doesn't really make sense. Okay, this is the same, this is the same, and this is our answer. Okay, so all these are kind of fake answers, but we got the rimas here, so the rimas has to be here, basically. But it's okurimasu, okay, to send something. Okay, so now our answers have changed. So kakko ni nani o iremasu ka? 1, 2, 3, 4 から一番いいものを一つ選んでください. Okay, so now we've changed it a little bit. We're still having to choose from 1, 2, 3, 4, but it's like, what do we put in the brackets? Okay, so now we're having to choose what's the appropriate word, I guess, for this sentence. So, スープでもらった something を見ると何を買ったかわかります. Alright, so we can see that we're now going to have to try to use a combination of grammar and vocabulary to work out what's going on here. So we got a de, we got a ta form, we got miru to, we got our o particle, o katta ka, this little indirect question, wakarimasu. Alright, we got reji, urishi to otsuri, seifu. Okay, so even if you know all these words, it doesn't really help. You have to know, well, what context are we going to see these words in? Alright, but basically saying, Super de moratta something or miru to. So, this is our natural consequence. So, when you look at the thing, I mean, we don't know what it is, but the thing that you receive from the supermarket, 何を買ったかわかります. You can understand what you bought. Okay? Now trust me, it's when I say it, it might seem obvious, but you know, this, especially this bit here, this 何を買ったかわかります. This is kind of it's not a strange sentence, but it'll be very unfamiliar to people who are at the N4 level, because they're going to be like, oh, I bought something, I don't know, right? This kataka makes a huge difference to the sentence, but it says like you can tell what you bought, right? So obviously this is the receipt. If you look at the receipt that you got from the supermarket, you can tell what you bought. Okay. この文と大体同じ意味の文があります。1、2、3、4が一番いいものを2つ分ください。Okay, so here's another thing that they're going to do. They're going to say, well, there's an underlined sentence. And then we've got 大体同じ意味の文があります。Alright, so they're saying one of these four is very similar in meaning to this underlined sentence. So you have to pick the one which is closest in meaning. Alright, so what do we got? パスポート番号を知らせてください. Alright, now this is, again, it's vocabulary, but people probably are going to work out that this is a passport. But then maybe not so familiar with bango, maybe not. I mean, I guess most people would know this from denwa bango, but can you remember that in the middle of an exam? Might be a bit hard. And shirasete, okay, this is a bit of an advanced word, definitely N4 level, but this would be the trick, okay? This is obviously the main part of the meaning of the sentence, okay? And shirasete is like tell me or let me know what your passport number is, okay? So this is kind of what someone would ask you at the airport, for example. Alright, so what have we got here? パスポート番号を写してください。パスポート番号を直してください。パスポート番号を決めてください。パスポート番号を教えてください。Alright, so our answers down here. 教える is to tell someone something. And 写して is kind of like, it's like to convey or to move or to copy or something like this. Alright, so, yeah. But if you don't know what shirasete is, how are you, you know, it can be very tricky sometimes. 直して is to fix or to repair, kimete to decide upon. Okay, so none of these are really working. But of course, these are all quite advanced words. Now, I can tell you, for example, that because I'm going to say that when I did Sankyu is very similar to N4. I can remember, for example, that I knew what utsushite was. Okay, because I learnt this kanji when I looked at the kanji for shashin and for eiga and all these kind of things. Okay, so I knew this one. And this one I knew because oshirase is a really common word you'll see in Japan, which means notice or warning or whatever. So I knew this one. Naoshite, I didn't know this word. Okay, I definitely didn't know this word. I know that I learned this word after I came back from Japan. Kimete, can't say that I knew it or didn't know it. I would say maybe I didn't know it, perhaps. Okay, so if you think about even my knowledge back then, I was kind of, and by the way, I definitely knew what oshiete was, okay? So, I had a choice between a very good answer, a word that I probably knew in a different context, and a word that I knew but didn't make sense in this, you know, when we compare it to shirasete, and then I had two unknowns, okay? So, it's not always easy to work out what the right answer is. Okay. じゃあ次の言葉の使い方で一番いいものを1、2、3、4 Okay, so now even in the question, we're having grammar which we need to know. Okay, so tsukai kata, this is tsukau, which is to use, and we turn it to the verb stem, tsukai, right? And then if we add kata to any verb stem, it's kind of like the way of doing it. So tsugi no kotoba, so the next word, which is jusho, no tsukai kata de ichiban ii mono o irande kudasai, right? So basically the way that this word is used, pick the best way that it is used. Okay, now again, you see that this is written in hiragana. Now there is actually kanji for this word, but this one's written in hiragana. So that makes it harder, okay? Now one thing I want to point out, and this has been a big shift in the way that this exam is structured now, is that if you look at the numbers of JLPT test participants, people from Asian backgrounds, particularly China, massive proportions of JLPT test takers are Chinese, okay? And then if you think, well, their language is comprised of kanji, that's quite a big advantage. Okay, I know that the kanji is quite different between Chinese and Japanese, but that's not all the time. Sometimes, especially when we're talking about this level, it's very, very, very similar. And at least they can have some pretty good educated guesses that perhaps someone like me, who doesn't have a kanji background when I was taking this exam, for example, wouldn't have. Okay, so it's a massive advantage. So what they'll do is they'll write these words out in hiragana to test whether it's like, well, do you know the Japanese, or are you just pulling off your Chinese background? Okay, so I've noticed since I've been taking the test that the kanji section, the kanji emphasis is a lot lower, and particularly in the reading comprehension, they have, for the very difficult kanji, they'll actually write above the kanji how to read it. Okay, so they test your kanji in this section, but then they'll also test, it's like, okay, but what about your vocabulary? They're going to test both of these. There's something else I was going to say about kanji, but I forgot. Oh yeah, the other thing, the other reason that they put this in hiragana is it's this kind of testing. Hey, what's your listening like? Are you just really good at studying and recognizing patterns in kanji, or are you good at remembering certain sounds and certain words in your head? These are two different skills. Okay, so this word, just spoiler alert, this word means address. So Toshika no tonari no jusho wa yubin kyoku desu. Okay, so not quite. This is saying next to the library. I mean, it doesn't make sense. The address next to the library is the post office. Doesn't really make sense. Okay, so this is getting close, alright, because if you don't know what jusho is, it might sound okay, and especially if you think that this sho means tokoro, which it is, you might think, well, the location of the meeting, tomorrow's meeting is on level 5. You think, oh, seems pretty good, but you need to know what jusho is. Alright, so this is very likely the answer. Okay, so here, koko ni, so basically talking about a form, write your address, your house address. And then this one is also, it's a bit of a, it's not a red herring, but it's a tempting one. Watashi ni imeiru no jusho oshiete kudasai. So please, it's, if you translate this, it's like, please tell me your email address, okay? But this type of, address doesn't work quite the same way it does in Japanese and English. When we talk about a jusho, it's the ju is it's kind of like residence or existing kind of word, so it's like a physical address rather than this kind of abstract email address. Okay, so that would be the better answer. Okay, so kako ni nani o iremasu ka? Alright, so we've got pretty much the same question we've had before. What goes in the box? Alright, so watashi no keshigomu mimasen deshita ka? Tsukue no shita ni something yo ochite imasu, ochite imasen, ochimasu, ochimasen. Okay, this is quite a tricky one, I think, for a lot of people. Okay, but we have a dialogue between A and B. So watashi no keshigomu, okay, keshigomu is an eraser, so my eraser. Mimasen deshita ka? So mimasen deshita. It's kind of like a rhetorical question, something, but it's like, have you not seen my eraser somewhere? Okay, so basically they've lost it. Okay, and then B says ah, so whatever. Tsukue no shita, so below the desk, ni something yo. Alright, now if we look at the stem of the verb here, we've got ochi. Alright, so some of you might recognize that ochiru, okay, is to fall. So you think, well, what is it going to be? Okay, we have to use grammar. So ochite imasu, ochite imasen, ochimasu, ochimasen. Alright, now this yo is a bit of a giveaway. This yo is kind of telling me that it's like, well, if they had not seen the eraser, they're probably not going to put yo on here. But because they've seen the eraser, they're trying to convey, B is trying to convey to A that, oh, I saw it dropped over there. Okay, so we can get rid of our negative here. I mean, of course, you have to know that this means drop as well to be able to get rid of this negative, and ochimasen. Okay, so then we've got to choose between ochite imasu and ochimasu. Right, and again, we have to go, well, what does our grammar tell us? Okay, now this is something I haven't quite done on the stream yet, but this is what's called the progressive form. And definitely I would say if you're going to go for the N4 level, you need to know your TEF form back to front. Okay, you need to be able to make the TEF form out of any verb, and you need to kind of look at what are called other state. Take him calls it the other states of the TEF form. But ochiteimasu, this one with the imasu, this is definitely one. This is probably the first one you'll learn once you've learned the TEF form. Okay, and what this is saying is it's in a state of being dropped, which basically means it's on the floor. Okay, ochimasu is kind of saying that it will fall, and obviously it can't will fall under the desk. It has to be on the desk. Okay, so it has to have it has to be in a state of falling, which means it's on the floor already. Okay. So now we have this kind of question, which is actually really common in JLPT, and we have a star. Okay, so hoshi ni hairu mono wa dore desu ka? 1,2,3,4 から一番いいものを一つ選んでください. So what actually happens here is we have a full sentence and we have 4 missing bits, and all 4 of these words are going to go into one of these 4 empty spots. And then you have to say is, well, where the star is, what word would go there? What word would go there? So we've got Yamada-san wa something 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 desu. So okay, so we don't have a whole lot. All right. Now we've got an example of what this would look like. So this is a different sentence. This is an N5 level 1, but we have our example sentence, and this is the answer. Pardon me. And we see it says Kino Nihongo no jisho o kai ni ikimashita. Now, first of all, when I look at this, I would see ikimashita. I would see my verb. Okay, this is probably going at the end. We've got kai ni ikimasu. It's like, okay, well, this is a very common verb as a target style word. We say I go to buy something. Okay, and then we got a no. Alright, so this no is telling us it's probably joining to another noun, and we have another noun here. So Nihongo no jisho o kai ni ikimashita. Alright, so because kai ni ikimashita, the kai ni is going to be our answer. Alright, so what this is telling us is that you don't necessarily have to get all 4 to work out what goes in the star one. Don't have to. Okay, and basically they're saying here you can't just have sentences which just kind of hang nowhere. So kino ikimashita nihongo no jisho kai ni. Alright, so it doesn't really, I mean it's like almost a sentence in Japanese, but you're not going to have this dangling bit here. And then here, it's just kind of strange. Obviously, you know, you got to pick the most appropriate answer, and this is much better. So what do we got here? Yamada-san wa, so we got jozu, guitar mo, hikeru shi, uta mo. Alright, so this is going to throw a spanner in the works already. I really don't want to get this one wrong. Okay, but we're dealing with a mo. Okay. Well, first of all, we should kind of pair some things up together. So the big hint here is that we've got guitar and hikeru, which is able to play. Alright, this is a potential form conjugation of hiku, which is to play. Okay, so we know that hikeru is not going to go with song, alright, because for sing we say this verb utau. So this can't work. So it has to be guitar and this are pairing up. And then this word of skillful at is pairing with this. Okay, now the big hint here is that we have a shi. So that would tell me that this is going to come first. Mada-san wa guitar mo hikeru shi, uta mo jouzu desu. That's what I'm going to go with. Yeah. So Yamada-san wa guitar mo hikeru shi, uta mo jouzu desu. So 3. Oof. Scary. Okay. So we had to go there. So this she, I should have pointed out, is giving reasons. So it's going to come first. That's the first reason. Alright. So now we're getting into a bit more of the reading comprehension. Okay. But like I said when I was going through the various JLPT levels, you sometimes you don't have to read the whole thing. I mean, here we got a box. Okay, and it says hako ni nani o iremasu ka? So where we put in the box, bunsho no imi o kangaete. So think about the passage's meaning. and then pick the best answer. Okay, so 次の文章はアリさんが友達の田中さんに書いた手紙です。Okay, so we've got a bit of context, which is saying this next passage, Ali wrote a letter to her friend Tanaka. This is what this is. Okay, we can see it's signed off by Ali here. Alright, so to be honest, I would just go straight for this box. So I'll start from here. So, でも今のパート3大学まで歩いて10分ぐらいです。Okay, so what have we got? Mo, ga, ya, wa. Well, I mean, we can pretty much get rid of ya straight away because ya is our incomplete list particle. It's kind of saying and. And here, you know, 大学までアパートや大学まで歩いて10分くらいです。Right? So it doesn't really make sense in this context. 今のアパートも大学まで。Okay? And that doesn't make sense when we look back at this previous sentence, which says, you know, before, you know, 前はアパートから大学まで電車とバスで1時間ぐらい、1時間半ぐらいかかりました。Right? So it took an hour and a half. So you would be using も because this apartment is a lot closer. So you wouldn't be using more here. So we're either dealing with ga or wa, alright? And this is probably a nightmare scenario for a lot of people. Like, oh my gosh, I could never tell the difference between wa and ga. Alright, it's very simple. You just gotta watch my video. I explain it all. I explain it all. Okay. So we're kind of saying, well, is it bringing up a general topic of conversation? Or are we bringing up a specific or an unknown? Or we're trying to identify something? Okay, and here it's really, I mean, I guess you could say it's kind of specific, but if we see up here, 前はアパートから大学まで. So here, I'm going to go with は. Okay, because it's kind of bringing up an additional topic here. Yeah, ga just kind of doesn't really work here. It's too specific. You know, you're just kind of saying, hey, as for this apartment, it was this far, and as for this apartment, it's this far. You're not kind of going like, you know, this apartment is 10 minutes. It's just too strong. Alright, I believe, I've actually seen this one before. This is some ad, right? Yeah. Yeah, so this is an ad for people who like coffee. Alright, now this is, I noticed pretty much every time I've run this with my students, they've got it wrong. Because there's some little tricky things in here, okay? But you see, this is the question, okay? So, インターネットで、中のコーヒーから 100g 400円のコーヒーを 500g 買いたいです。いくらになりますか? Alright, so the question is, how much is it going to be? But we've got to see how much they're buying, okay? So, from Nakano Coffee, which is what this is for, on the internet, 100g 400 yen. So they want 100 grams of the 400 yen coffee. So that tells us that there's different types of coffee. So they want to buy so 100 grams of this coffee is 400 yen normally. And then they want to buy 500g 買いたい. So they want to buy 500 grams. Okay? So if 100 grams is 400 yen, clearly if you're buying 500 grams, you just do, you know, 5 times 4, and you get 2,000 yen. Alright, and we go, oh, it must be 3. Okay, but let's be careful. Let's read it first. So, コーヒーが好きな人に便利なお店を紹介します. So people who like coffee, I am introducing a new shop to you. 中野コーヒーではインターネットでコーヒーを買うことができます. Right, so with this Nakano Coffee, you can buy coffee on the internet, right? 買うことができます. You can do it. コーヒーを送ってもらうには, so if you want to basically receive coffee, 普通に200円かかりますか? Alright, so basically the shipping, it costs 200 yen, alright? About $2. 200 yen. これかかりますが, but 500g 以上頼むとタダになります. Okay, so tada, this word means free. By the way, you don't get a dictionary in this exam. So tada ni narimasu. So it's going to become free. So normally it would cost 200 yen. So 2,200 yen doesn't quite work here. Why? Because it's 500g 以上. So more than 500 grams. And you might say, well, I'm buying 500 grams. Does that count? In Japanese it does. そして 500g 以上買うと200円安くなります。Okay? So here we're looking at our adverbs. Alright? We're saying なります is to become, and 安い becomes 安く, so it becomes 200 yen cheaper. Okay? Always, you have to know your adverbs. You have to know your adjectives pretty well if you're going to go for N4. So, this is another thing. So not only do we not get the 200 yen fee, but it's becoming 200 yen cheaper. So, お店でコーヒーを選ぶのも楽しいですが、忙しい時など一度利用してみませんか? Alright, so this is just useless information. Alright, so what are we going to go with? Well, we're not going to go for 2,200 because we're buying 500, so we're going to get that discount. Plus, we're going to get 200 yen off. So, 1,800 yen. Have I got my maths right? Nailed it. Okay, I'm going a bit longer than I wanted to, but we'll just finish these last two. We might do the listening some other time. So, alright, so pretty much like always. Okay, what's the question? And this is another technique I would really recommend you guys do. You read the question first. Okay, because this really focuses your reading in. So, 日本では引っ越しをしたとき、どんな習慣がありますか? Okay, so again, we're going to need a lot of vocabulary here. But 引っ越し is to move house. And 習慣 is like a custom or a tradition. So what kind of tradition exists when you move house? Alright, a bit long. Anyway. So 日本では, okay, what else we got? 小さなものを持って近所に挨拶する. Alright, so get a small thing and take it, and 挨拶, this is probably a hard word for a lot of people in N4 level, but this is a greeting. Okay, and again, this is the advantage of living in Japan, alright? We had to do aisatsu all the time in my classroom, you know? Every time the teacher comes in, you have to stand up and bow, and when they leave, you have to stand up and bow again, and then, you know, this word aisatsu gets thrown around all the time. Pretty tricky kanji, by the way, but in hiragana, not so bad. So we have to take something to the neighborhood and greet people, and this already kind of sounds Japanese, to be honest. But okay, so very similar thing, but here this is more specific. It's saying the person next door, you give them something small, right? Watasu, you pass them something small. 隣の人に挨拶の手紙を書いて出す. Okay, so kind of similar to to, but instead of giving them something, we specifically write them a letter and give it to them. 挨拶の手紙を自分の家の玄関に貼る. So, genkan, again another word that perhaps not so familiar with if you haven't been to Japan, but super important in Japan, and this is the entrance area where you take your shoes off at the front of like all Japanese houses. So this is more saying we stick a letter onto the front of our own house to like a greeting letter. Alright, so what is this all talking about? So, 日本では昔から引っ越しをしたとき、近所の家へ挨拶に行く習慣があります. Okay, so this is just telling us that there is a tradition of doing something to the neighborhood. Okay, so already it's kind of hinting that it's probably not going to be 4, because it's saying, well, it's the neighborhood, and maybe not 2 or 3, but at least we know it's probably not just putting it on your own house. これからいろいろお世話になります。どうぞよろしくお願いします. Okay, so this is a very set phrase in Japan, and again, unless you've lived in Japan, perhaps not so familiar to you, but お世話になります, you hear it all the time when people say, you know, thanks for taking care of me, thanks for doing this. I had to say this to pretty much everyone, you know, not had to, but I wanted to, for people who looked after me when I was in Japan. It's very important to say this phrase in Japan, by the way. どうぞよろしくお願いします. Again, a very set phrase, so thanks for taking care of me. You know, please look after me as well, I guess this means. という意味です. Alright, so this という, this quoting, this is another skill you need to know how to do in Japanese to pass N4. アパートやマンションでは自分の部屋の隣に住んでいる人や上の部屋と下の部屋に住んでいる人などに挨拶をします. Okay, so they're kind of saying, well, if you live in a mansion, which is what they call an apartment block or an apartment, 自分の部屋の隣に住んでいる人や, so the people who live next to your room, or the people who live above and below your room, 挨拶をします. You have to greet them, okay? You have to say hello. 引っ越しをしたら, and this tara form, It's a conditional, so when you move, すぐに挨拶に行きましょう. Alright, so don't delay is what they're saying. すぐに挨拶に行きましょう. Let's go and greet people, alright, sooner rather than later. 挨拶に行くときは, so when you go to do the 挨拶, 小さの, I always forget how to read this. 品物. I think it's 品物. Let's check. Yeah, 品物. Nailed it. 品物を持っていくことが多いです. Okay, so we take some kind of small gift, okay, and often Japanese people say つまらないものですけど. Alright, so it's just a little boring thing, you know, very common to say this. することなのですから. Oh, sorry, 行くこと多いです. Right, so this is common, alright, so this is already giving us our answer. We take something small, and this happens a lot. ことが多いです. This is very familiar. Okay, so first of all, 1 is looking better and better, 2 is still looking good, and 3 maybe not so much anymore, and 4 we kind of got rid of a while ago. 例えば、タオルや石鹸, so towels, soap, お菓子, so sweets, なのです。しかし、大事なのは挨拶をすることなんですか, right? So it's saying, you know, however, the important thing is actually to do the greeting, right? To say hello, to introduce yourself. どんなものを持っていくかはあんまり心配しなくてもいいです, right? So you don't have to actually worry about what you're taking. It's the greeting, which is the important bit. Saying your name, saying hello. Okay. Now, I want to point out that I lived in an apartment in Japan for like a year pretty much, and no one ever came and said hello to me. And I didn't go and say hello to anybody. So I'm not sure how true this is, you know, big city living or whatever. I mean, people were friendly to me when I saw them in a stairwell or whatever. I'd always say hello, and they'd say hello back. Actually, people were very friendly to me in the building, but yeah, I never had people giving me stuff, let's put it that way. But I wouldn't really expect it. In the city, you know, it's not quite the same. Anyway, 挨拶に行ったけれども、留守だった時は挨拶の言葉を書いて手紙など玄関のポストに入れておくのがいいです. Okay? So here, it's a bit of a red herring. It's kind of wanting to think you about 4, I guess. But they're saying, just imagine, 挨拶に行ったけれども, so just say you go to do the greeting, but 留守だった時は, so 留守 just means they're not home. So if they're not home, 挨拶の言葉を書いた手紙など, so the stuff that you were going to say, you put it in a letter, 玄関のポストに入れておくのがいいです. Right? So you're saying, well, you don't have to catch them when they're home. You just write a bit of a letter introducing yourself, put it in the post box, and you're all good. 最近は引っ越しの挨拶をしない人も多くなっています. Okay, this is what I was talking about. So people who don't do the moving greeting. I don't know how you'd really translate this. The greeting when you move. 多くなっています. Okay, so it's getting bigger. 特に一人で住むときは挨拶をしない人がたくさんいます. Okay, so people who live by themselves don't do this. しかし私は引っ越しの挨拶はやはりいい習慣だと思います. Right, so again, kind of useless information. So what are we going to go with? What are we going to go with? It's a bit hard actually. So we think, what is it actually saying? So here it's not really talking about the neighborhood. So, I mean, when we use this word kinjo, it's kind of, I mean, to me, this is kind of saying we go to everybody in the neighborhood and give them a present. That's not really what it's saying. So 2 looks pretty good. And 3 doesn't really, it only applies if the person's not there. No! Okay, so there we go, I got it wrong. Alright, next one. Oh, actually, I think I remember this one. Alright, so this is actually a big deal in Japan, but I think I'm going to end the stream there on that embarrassing note. So, I probably should have read it a bit closer. But, you know, it's a time thing, so you don't always get that. So thanks so much for watching the stream, everybody. I will continue to look at some JLPT stuff to try and get people in the mood. And I'm going to go through some techniques for how to study for JLPT right at the end. And thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe so that you get notifications when I go live. and that way you can check back to all the previous videos I've done as well. And as always, please leave a comment and a like if you can, and particularly if there's something you'd want me to, if you're thinking of doing JLPT yourself, please give me a comment, say that you're doing it, and maybe ask for some tips on what to do and how to study, because I've got all the way to level 2, and I'm almost certain. Let me just say, I'm almost certain I'm passing level 1 this year. I got so close last year, and I'm going to be better prepared this year. So let's do it. Let's do it together. And thanks so much for watching, everybody.